Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pivoted Success podcast series, hosted by our friend Sean Cochran of TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith of eSAX. Today, we're very pleased to be welcoming serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Ruckify and Better Software Company, Steve Cody. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Jared and Sean. Much appreciated.
So, Steve, we've been following your progress for many, many years here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, about some of the entrepreneurial journey you've been on. Tell us quickly, what is some of your background? Like, what are you all about as a serial entrepreneur? What does that mean?
It means you get into trouble a lot, I think. My background, really left school in grade 10, very dyslexic. So school wasn't for me. My grandfather had saved up some money. He had $1,200 in the bank. So I asked him if I could take that money, start a window cleaning company. So basically bought the ladder, the squeegee, the bucket, started window cleaning, found out I was scared of heights. So then that taught me that I had to hire people. So that was actually a good thing. And then just kind of one thing led to another. And, we've built and sold many businesses over my career. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's great. I mean, most recently you co-founded Rockify with some major industry leaders in Canada. Some of us already know the story of how Rockify got started, or a Better Software Company. Like, would you care to share where some of that inspiration comes from to start businesses?
Yeah, you know what? We had Cody Mobile, auto detailing business. My wife kept getting mad at me because the car was always dirty, and she'd always say, go get it clean. But I don't know, you have to bring your car to an auto detailer. Somebody's got to pick you up. You got to leave it there for a couple hours. The whole thing's a real pain. So, so I started Cody Mobile. So it was like mobile auto detailing, and then the detailer could come to us. So I thought that was pretty good. We started a swing stage rental business because we were renting swing stages when we had our window cleaning company. Mm-hmm. Got into Monster Halloween because, I walked into the first big temporary Halloween store that was on Maryville Road one year with my kids, and we were in the party rental game, and I just said, man, that place is rocking. So we need to do that. And, we turned that into 26 locations across Canada. Better Software, it's a little bit of a different story. So, it all really started with a book called E-Myth. And we had Cody Party at the time, and party rental business is really hard, and you're working weekends. It's like the restaurant business. There's a lot of moving pieces. And we were going to Florida with the kids. So we drove, and I got the CD. It was E-Myth Revisited. Listened to it. And man, I recommend it for any entrepreneur. But what it showed me is I really needed better process in my business. So then you're probably going back about 12 years. So I thought I needed to build a software application at that time to help run the business. So I didn't know anything about software. So I hired a guy, we started building software, and it actually turned into a competitive advantage for all of our businesses. Then in 2013, our son passed away. We had 3 companies on the go. So we had Cody Party, we had franchises across the country. Monster Halloween, which was, doing really well across the country. And we had just started Cody Mobile, which was a franchise system. And when my son passed away, I lost all my energy. I couldn't get out of bed. The only thing I could do was have a hot bath or walk for 9 months. So what that meant as an entrepreneur, when you lose your energy, that's a really bad thing. So we had to have a fire sale on all of our businesses. So we sold Monster, we sold Cody Mobile, and fire sale prices, just to kind of stay afloat and to keep the businesses going. So when all that was done and I was feeling better, all I had was about $2 million in debt. So didn't have anything. Everybody was saying you should go bankrupt. It's your best way out of this. And I was determined not to. But the one thing I did have was the software that we had created. So I said, you know what? I'm going to turn that into a business. And my kids thought it was hilarious because can't even operate the iPhone. But and that's I could go on, but there's a whole story how we got better software off the ground. But that was just a thing of necessity, right? Turn something you have into something. Ruckify was a little bit different. We had a big storm came through the neighborhood, tree fell down out front. My neighbor Bruce was out there cutting it up, and I went out to see what was going on, and he's like, Steve, I can't get the stump, the blade's not big enough on the chainsaw. And, we thought, oh man, like we got a lot of neighbors here with big garages. Somebody's probably got a chainsaw, but we had no way of knowing that. And we said we should create an app for that. And that's what turned into Ruckify.
Actually, we should mention for our listeners, that was Bruce Linton, co-founder also of Canopy Growth. So Steve, having gone through such a traumatic experience with your son many years ago, how were you affected by COVID? Do you think some of the businesses or many of the businesses out there might also have lost that drive and that energy because the world seems to be collapsing around them? They don't know what's happening in their business. Like, is there any parallel? I mean, I can't even imagine what you've been through, but, trying to move forward,
I was literally just talking to a professor. I'm speaking to a class about it yesterday. And, definitely COVID's brought a lot of devastation to a lot of people, feeling of hopelessness, all that. But, I think resiliency is kind of like a muscle. And what we went through after Nick passed away, to me, COVID it's like, bring it on, because it doesn't really, like, so what, right? So unless you've lost a loved one, then I think that's obviously awful. You've lost a job, that's awful, but you can recover, right? There's so much you can recover from, and it may seem hard to recover. And I think if I remember back to after Nick passed, and it was 9 months, and I credit like walking as a big, just mental health. You have to get your energy back, and you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anything else. And I can remember, and I'd walk like 15 or 20 kilometers a day. And I can remember the day everything changed. And I was walking down as a wooded path, and I'm walking down the path, and I'm looking down at the ground, and I'm looking like down. And I kind of thought it was like the walls were like, just like this, right? With your thoughts, your mental health. And then I just had this thought, I should look up. And I literally remember like looking up, and, instead of the walls going in like that, I kind of had the walls go that way. And my world changed, because then I was like not looking inward. I was not looking narrow. I was looking kind of outward and looking more at opportunities. And that's for me. That's where everything changed, and in the middle of that walk, and then that's when I started thinking, okay, well, what happened. How do I move on? Like, what the hell do I do now? And so I think COVID. I can remember we had a team in Austin. We had one-way tickets. We were in Austin. We were launching Rockify. We had an $800,000 budget. I mean, we were going to be going to NASDAQ. And March 13th, like all the sports teams started canceling. And to me, like that was when things got real. It's like, what the, or that was on the 12th, I think March 12th. And March 13th, we said, my wife was with me, and we had a team down there. We said, we got to get home. This is like, and that was scary, but I don't know. You just found a way to kind of settle your thoughts down and think, how am I going to turn this into a positive? So I think we had about a day or two where it was really scary. But we turned it around.
I think it's so important what you were saying about your energy as an entrepreneur, especially. But I find the pandemic in particular has sort of taken everybody's wind out their sails. I mean, it's been a year now. I mean, it's been pretty depressing. There's been a lot of hardships that people have had to deal with. And like you said, not in the extreme case of necessarily losing a loved one, but just in your day-to-day life, it's been so impacted. And then as an entrepreneur, say you've lost your revenues, you've lost maybe your staff, maybe all of that stuff starting to happen to you. It's hard to sort of get that positivity back and that energy to sort of push you to that next phase, whether that's a pivot in your business or maybe a completely different change. Like you said, is sometimes you have to look at your life and look at what you're doing and say, you know what, this is for the best. We need to change and do this, or we need to make that sort of positive change. But it's just so hard to get out of this rut sometimes. And as an entrepreneur, I find it so hard to not beat yourself up and sort of blame yourself for everything that happens, really. But when it's a scenario like this and it's truly out of your control, it's hard to sort of let go of that.
Yeah, big time. And you know what? There's going to be a reality. There's going to be some businesses that are obsolete. And I think people need to be honest with themselves. But I think there's going to be, well, there's tremendous opportunity. And whenever there's change, there's opportunity. And there's a lot of change coming. And I think, so you want to be careful. No different than when I go back to when Nick passed away. Had I hung on to those businesses when I couldn't, it would have been a disaster, right? Because they wouldn't have survived, and it would have put more pressure on me. So I knew for me to move forward and to survive, I had to let go, and to move on to let go, make myself better. I had to be better. I had to have energy. I had to have clarity. And then find a way to rebuild. And, so I think, but sometimes hanging on can be, I'm not saying don't give up, because that's not good either. But, it's that fine line of, I can't hang on to this. I got to move on to something else, because you could be missing out on some good opportunity.
Well, one of the traits of any entrepreneur out there, I'm sure Steve would agree, is that perseverance, that drive to get things done. But when you see everything it maybe has not been perfect in the past, it might take a pandemic to have people realize that, you know what, it is time for a change. Rather than, like you said, your eyes are to the ground, you're focused on what you're doing, looking at the big picture. Okay, maybe your finances were never that good. Maybe you didn't have XYZ in place. So now it might be time to look wider and see, it is time for a change. That's how I've approached my business. And it's,
Yeah, opportunity for a reset, right? So, yeah.
So, Steve, with Ruckify, you mentioned that, of course, you hit that March 12th, 13th, and things just got very real and very weird. And you said it took a couple of days to sort of adjust, but what did you guys do to sort of pivot or sort of position yourselves with this new reality we're sort of faced with?
Yeah, it was really, it's all about cash flow. And at that point in time, we had raised, I think it was 13 million. We were looking to raise another 5 million. We were literally in the middle of a fundraising round, which we had to cancel, because it's pretty hard to convince somebody to invest in a sharing marketplace in a pandemic, right? So are people really going to share treadmills, or are they going to share, so we didn't know. So we didn't have a lot of money in the bank. So we had, I think, about 6 weeks of cash in the bank at the time. So the first thing we had to do was say, okay, how do we preserve cash to get us to at least November? We had no visibility, but we said, if we could preserve our cash and get us to November, that gives us a kind of an opportunity to reset and kind of see how this is going to play out. So in doing that, we had kind of an ABC plan. If things got better, we would do this. ABC plan, kind of, if things got worse, we would do this. So that was really the first thing we did. So unfortunately, we had to, let it was half of our team go at the time. So we had no choice, because we had to make sure we preserved that cash, or nobody would be employed. So we did that. And then, it was kind of, we'd learned, and I'd learned it even going back, like when Nick passed away, is kind of your best way out of you don't look at making money, but if you can find a way to help people, that gives you energy. Like, get a call and help somebody, or help an organization, or have an impact. That gives you really good energy. I don't know if it's just the world giving it to you or whatever. So for us, our first thing was, how do we help? How do we use Rockify and help? And we got in touch with United Way, and quickly learned that there were people, elderly people, that were starting to starve because they had no contact with the outdoor world. They needed cell phones. There were students that couldn't get to school. there were all these, there are people on their deathbeds that couldn't see their families. So then we started this massive campaign about, give us your digital device and we'll get it to people that need it. And we did everything for free. Like we said, like nobody can make money off this. And we did that. And, that resulted in some really good media coverage. It just energized our team. Like we were getting, I remember like a family from Syria where the kids sent us like a video, video of, thank you, Ruckify, and with their mom and dad. And anyways, it was just, and that to us, like that was kind of our turning point. So our turning point wasn't like, oh, let's find a way to make money or anything, but let's find a way to get energized. And that's what did it for us. So, and it just went from there. And then, we got amazing media coverage. And then, gyms were getting a hold of us saying, people can't come to our gym. Can you guys help us organize where we could get like our treadmills rented? And so we started to save businesses, and then people were able to make money, make mortgage payments. So anyway, so it all worked out quite well.
Yeah, it's so nice to see I find entrepreneurs in general often have a bit more of that community mind, but in these sort of horrible situations, it's really nice to see people turn to see what they can do for others, because we've never been in a situation like this. You've never had that. It's global. It's just wild that everybody on this planet is suffering from the exact same thing. So it's just unbelievable to see people make those shifts to try and help. And of course, that does bring goodwill, and then of course can help you down the road. And especially if you're stuck in a position where you're sort of in a holding pattern and can't really do anything until this sort of breaks. Well, what can you do to help others and position yourself to be able to support people through this? Because like you said earlier, I think it's really important that entrepreneurs in the local communities get together to be able to boost ourselves and really sort of position ourselves for the recovery side of this, because it's going to be tough. You'd like to think that this is the worst of it, but there's still worse to come.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. And if you look at our community, like, I don't know, Sharon from Avant-Garde or Catherine Landry, like we've got some amazing people in the community doing some amazing things. And their businesses have been devastated, but they're out there helping. So, and that's going to pay dividends for sure. Mike Wood, right, from Ottawa Special Events, like total, where the hell did that guy come from? He's an absolute leader. He should be prime minister. So, yeah.
Actually, there's a meme of him. Of that, yeah, maybe one day, who knows? But helping other people and organizations in such a time of need, if we're able to, that just seems like a natural way to go. Any successful business should, or even unsuccessful business, should have that philanthropic mind frame to help, rather than just the bottom line.
Yeah, and it can't. If you say you want to help, don't make it about money, because then you're not going to help in the right way. Well, we did Constance Bay. If you guys remember the floods out there, we saved like a lot of homes, and we still like our Rockify. If you go in a restaurant, some restaurants like before COVID with a Rockify t-shirt on, everything would be paid for because we saved somebody's house in that restaurant. And it wasn't my idea, Constance Bay. It was somebody on our team. His family was from Constance Bay. His name was Keith. And I didn't even know the floods were happening at the time. And he tells me about these floods, what's happening, can we help? All I said was, Keith, do whatever the hell we can do. The only thing you have to make sure is we never profit from it, and nobody else can either. Nobody can make money. And that's all I said. And then they took it from there, and they did phenomenal things to help a lot of people.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Well, I find it so important too to differentiate that, because there's a lot of people with ulterior motives, of course, that are using positive or sort of charitable things to get ahead. But I think at the base of it, it's just so important that be genuine, because together we all do better than we do by ourselves. So it's just so important to come together, especially in these insanely unheard of times, right?
Well, look at, our industry. So we own Cody Party as well. But if I look at that industry and how that competitors have come together, we hired Ariel over at Fiesta. He's a competitor, but he's helped me out. Look at Mike Wood. We've helped each other out. It's just sharing at Avant-Garde. So, and I think those are some really good things that have come out of the pandemic, right? Is we're all people at the end of the day, and just realizing that matters more than anything else, I think is really important.
Well, and that's my real hope for the long term is, I mean, once we get past the awfulness of it all, is that hopefully we can all look to each other a little bit more and say, you know what? This is what's important, is the people and what's happening. Money and all these other things, of course, make the world go round, but the greed and some of the other stuff out there, hopefully it's given people a bit of a shake that it's not what matters. Like everybody's health and safety and all that stuff is the most important.
Yeah.
Sean, Steve, how do you plan to move forward? What does your future hold in, let's say, the short run, the next 6 months to a year from now? Because yes, people normally do the 3-year plan, but with COVID, who knows? So I think most people, organizations are having much shorter term help, like assistance with their long-term planning these days. So what does a short-term plan look for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in a bit of a transition right now. So we spent about 3.5 years building Rockify. It's getting listed on the TSXV. My partner Bruce is an absolute pro in the capital markets and listing companies. We did our final raise in November, and we raised about $6.8 million before the listing. And through that process, we recognized, I love building businesses. I love solving big problems. And with Ruckify, I was able to use my rental experience to solve the problem. But building a business and having a company listed on the TSXV are really two different things. And, but that's where, having a partner like Bruce, we could transition to him really leading it through that process. So back in late November, I started looking for a replacement CEO. Ended up resigning late January. So right now, we talk about opportunity. It's like, what's next? It's like, what's not next? Like, there's so many things you could be doing. Like, there's so much opportunity and change, right? Like, look at Elon Musk. Look at the Starlink satellites. That gets me thinking about, a platform for remote workers. Think about the gig economy. Think about, a marketplace for, to get a dog groomer, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many opportunities. So I'm not sure yet which one I'm going to settle on. So I'm still on the board with Rockify, still a huge supporter, and, there's a lot of work to do there, but I'm also excited to kind of get on and build the next thing.
I've had a Ruckify store since way back when, so big fan of what you have to offer. And I think I've planted, I don't know how many, a couple of dozen trees by now from you guys. So
awesome.
Keep up with
awesome.
I find with the changing sort of dynamics, I mean, the sharing economy was already a big thing, but do you think COVID's going to sort of really kick that into the sort of next gear?
No doubt about it. Like, I couldn't have imagined, I don't know, like 2 years ago, my 23-year-old daughter wanting to buy used clothes, like thinking that was cool. Like they don't need to buy. I think it's maybe taboo really soon to be buying new clothes because it's going to have a real negative impact on the environment. So, why aren't we recycling? Why aren't we sharing more? And when COVID started, like a big part of the biggest part of Rockify was the environmental impact. And that's really what we were building Ruckify on. And we thought we would lose that after COVID. And the focus would, more on the economy and how people were, needed to make money and that kind of thing. And that's definitely true. But I think the whole environmental thing's actually accelerated. People are really enjoying the blue skies. I don't know about you guys, but man, those skies look a hell of a lot bluer. People are getting out, they're getting to enjoy the outdoors more than they ever have before, and they're appreciating it. So I think, so anyways, that whole environmental thing's even bigger. And all that comes back to sharing economy. The gig economy is going to grow, or is growing exponentially. I read an article because people are working at home. So if you're doing your full-time job, maybe you got a little gig job on the side.
Yeah.
Right. So like, why not? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you need 2 or 3 gig things. Maybe you enjoy the freedom and you're going to do some gig jobs. So yeah, it's going to, and just there's change, and in change, there's tremendous opportunity.
There's one of the things you mentioned about the environmental impact. We used to hear a lot about the pollution levels of certain larger cities, or even some cities in China, for instance. I'm curious to see how that might have changed when the world stopped moving, for the most part. And then the whole gig economy, so many times we hear, have a side hustle, have your part-time, you have your day job to make ends meet, then do your passion. What are you enthusiastic about on the side? Well, as a full-time musician, gigs were my gig. and then, but because of COVID, musicians and event planners who host events, done, will be the last to ever recover. And I made the decision, March 12th or March 13th, after you're right, the day of, oh crap, after your little cry here and there. What then? I've been playing for 35 years. I don't plan to go back. I might hire other musicians. Absolutely.
Wow.
Get out there. Yeah. It's just, you have to change and pivot on the spot.
Yeah. Good for you. Awesome.
What about some words of wisdom, Steve, during times of COVID for other entrepreneurs? Like, we've touched on quite a few, but do you have any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if they're words of wisdom. They're just, something that worked for me, and I talked about it earlier, is you really have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anything else. So, there's good breathing exercises, that I still do. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety, breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds. Do that 5 times, and that'll feel good. Go for a walk, get some exercise. It may sound simple, but it really is. So just get yourself good mentally. That'll build up your energy. And when you have that, anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Steve, especially about the sort of looking after yourself, because I think a lot of the time, especially in weird times like this, you're so focused on everything else that you're not worried about yourself as much, and your sort of energy tank starts to dwindle. And it's really important to look within yourself to really figure out what it is that you can do internally to make that change, to sort of lead a happier life yourself, but of course be able to lead your people as well, because they look to you, and that's a bit of a pressure. But if you're not able to look within yourself and be where you need to be, then your organization is obviously going to struggle as well.
Yeah. Take the time you need to just be healthy. No doubt about it.
Yeah, most of the time, entrepreneurs are so busy. We're pushed in so many different directions. Some of us have a family life. It takes even more time, especially with a young family. I can't even imagine, Sean, the time pressures on somebody like you. Taking the time for yourself to go for the walk can be very a lot of people don't have the time. I never did it until COVID. And actually back in May, I was the heaviest I've ever been. I gained so much weight, more than the COVID-20. We're talking COVID 50. And I started walking like you used to do, Steve, 15, 20 kilometers a day. And I explored the forest, the fields by my house. And I've lost 50 pounds since then. And
wow, good for you.
And it really helped my mental health. I didn't even realize it. And if it wasn't for COVID, I would never have taken the time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the hitting the pause button and taking that time that's the hard part, because you're always so hyper focused on everything. But in times like this, where you're going to be bottomed out emotionally already, it's even more important to really look at what you can do. And even like you said, just a quick walk. If you can spend a half an hour, an hour a day, that alone will make a big impact. So even just little steps to get you towards where you're trying to be, I think, is very important.
Yeah, turning it into habits. If you want to wake up an extra half an hour earlier, look, the phone's probably not ringing at 8 o'clock in the morning as much. You can get much work done. Maybe your kids are asleep at that time. Wake up an hour early, go for a half an hour walk a day, turn it into a habit. These are successful traits of entrepreneurs. Steve, do you have any normal routines that you'd care to share?
Well, 2 things, probably. Number 1 is walk. So, we try to get out for at least 5K a day. Minimum, and the other thing is making sure you have thinking time. because we're all kind of plugged in all the time. So, the best way for me is I'll drive to Kingston. I'll just drive to Kingston because I know if I'm driving, I'm not looking at my phone and I can be thinking. So those are two really. So I do that. I'll go for a 2-hour drive, probably 3 or 4 times a week. So it's thinking time. It's not driving time. It's thinking time, and everything kind of falls back into place. And anyways, works for me.
I don't say about disconnecting because we're so connected these days, and it's so hard. And it's something like your phone, especially, is you're just attached to it, and you don't notice. I mean, how much you put your time into it, even if it's important business stuff or frivolous, whatever stuff. So being able to disconnect like that and force yourself to not touch it, I think is really important.
Well, your brain's in reactive mode, right? Because you're reacting to these messages that you're seeing. If you give yourself thinking time, it could be proactive thinking, which is a lot different than reactive thinking. So you need proactive thinking time. Can't do that with a cell phone around.
Yeah. I live vicariously through you several ways, Steve. One is I think the farthest I've ever driven was downtown Ottawa 6 months ago. And so you take it. I'll take a day trip down to Kingston and just clean my mind frame. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. What about some of your entrepreneurial books? Have you been having a chance to read a bit more during COVID, Steve? Would you have other thoughts besides the E-Myth?
I mean, there's a lot of audio books that I read. The one I recommend always is E-Myth. I had entrepreneurs just last week that I recommended it to, that I was on with. I mean, Good to Great. I mean, and you know what? I think the problem is an entrepreneur, we're a bit ADD. So like right now I'm having a hard time getting through a whole book. So, I'll kind of get through to certain chapters that I want to listen to. But that's, I wish I would be spending more time reading during COVID, and I keep thinking that I want to. Reality is I haven't. So shame on me.
Next up.
Yeah. Even walking, do it when I can't listen to an audio if I'm on the couch because I'll fall asleep. So, I can do it when I'm driving, but I prefer to be thinking. So anyways, it's quirks.
Great. Well, do you have any last minute questions, Sean, before we wrap up today?
No, that's great, Steve. Really appreciate you taking the time. It's just so important right now for us to try and voice a bit of positivity and really get the message out that this isn't the end of the world. I promise it is going to get better. And whatever hardships you're dealing with, hopefully will help you build to be more successful and stronger in the future. But it's just a matter of really focusing on yourself and not letting the sort of mental health side of things get away from you, because it's very easy to do, especially in this isolated world that we're in right now. So, yeah.
So on behalf of Sean Cochran from TCC Canada, myself, Jared Goldsmith from eSAX, I want to thank our friend and serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Ruckify and Better Software Company, Steve Cody, for taking the time to join us on the Pivoted Success Podcast.
Thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated.